The Red River Shootout is upon us. The number one ranked Texas Longhorns take on Oklahoma in Dallas in the Cotton Bowl. Helping us break it all down, a good friend of mine, good friend of the show, does a great job talking all things Texas. CJ Vogel of On Texas Football, he joins us once again. CJ, what's going on, my friend? Appreciate you taking the time.
It's a great weekend for anybody that's a Texas or OU fan. This is what you wait for all year. I'm excited for it. Should be a good one.
Yeah, it's going to be electric. One of the best rivalries, if not the best, in all of college football. CJ, before we get into this game, let's lock in on what Texas has done to this point. Obviously, 5-0 on the season, 1-0 in conference play. It's been an interesting last couple weeks, right? You had the bye week before that, the injury to Quinn Ewers. Arch Manning slides in, takes over. We now know Quinn is obviously going to be back for this game against Oklahoma. Through 5 games, CJ, just your biggest takeaways, your biggest impressions, and what you've seen thus far from the Longhorns. Again, the SEC debut has been made. It was a win over Mississippi State. Take from that what you will, but so far so good for Burnt Orange this season.
Yeah, as you said, I mean, so far so good. You got a number one by your name. I don't think many Texas fans will be complaining about that. At least I hope not, right? You know, you've been waiting a long time for this to be the case. And you look like you have an offense that will be able to compete with anyone that you face this year. And that's with Georgia on the schedule, right? You already went up to Ann Arbor and you put together a good offensive performance. You won 31-12. You're sitting there saying, okay, we can compete with anybody. We can go anywhere. We got a good offensive line. Let's see where this takes us. And of course, through 5 games, Texas has only allowed 3 touchdowns to opposing offenses. I think you're going to take that as well. I know that they haven't played many talented quarterbacks, and I know that the level of competition through 5 weeks so far for the Longhorns isn't great, but they're doing what they're asked of them and what's expected. And that to me is the biggest takeaway. It's not necessarily always been this case over the last 15 years. So far, it's been pretty sound, and that's all that I can take away so far and to be pleased with when watching this Texas football team.
CJ, has anything surprised you to this point, or has Texas kind of been what you thought they would be through 5 games?
Yeah, I was expecting a bit more in the running game. And I think right now when you look at Texas defensively, you look at Texas offensively, what's the big weak point or what's kind of that question mark that maybe wasn't expected at the beginning of the year? And it's the running game. You haven't seen many explosive run plays until Mississippi State. The longest rush by a running back had only been 20 yards. I think Texas only has 11 rush attempts this year, extending beyond 10 yards down the field by a running back. That's bottom half of the SEC, and that's even with returning 4 out of 5 offensive linemen from a year ago, and Cam Williams stepping in at right tackle, already receiving day 1 or day 2 grades in next year's NFL draft. So a bit of a surprise, a bit of a downer, but ultimately that's one of the only areas right now that you could point to and say, ooh.
So, CJ, as we turn our attention to the Red River Shootout, I want to give you the floor to explain if you were talking to, again, me, because I've never experienced it in person. For someone who's not as familiar with this rivalry, can you put into words just the magnitude of this football game? Because you and I were talking just before we clicked record here that, you know, it doesn't matter what the records are, what the spread is in Vegas, the scenario. Like, this is the biggest game, it feels like, for both sides in that season, and really dictates how that season is going to play out. It's revered as one of the best rivalries in all of college sports. Can you put into words just what this ball game means to Texas fans specifically?
Well, first off, I'm glad it's reaching a new audience in the SEC, because I think Big 12 fans were tired of it, you know, kind of dominating the best rivalry headlines, right? You know, and it is the best rivalry in college football. It's the best single game atmosphere in college football. There's nothing else like it. A stadium split 50-50 down the middle in crimson and burnt orange. The momentum swings in this game, you can feel it. You know, when your team's in there and they turn the ball over, one half the stadium's erupting as if, you know, they just won a championship, and the other side very much, you know, very silent. And it's unlike anything else. You know, it's a very unique atmosphere. You're at the state fair. You walk in as friends, you leave as enemies, or vice versa, you know, depending on how the day goes. But it's so awesome to see both fan bases embrace this game, to not want to move it to an NFL stadium. I know Jerry World's one of those places where they've been, you know, maybe hinting at moving to in the future. I'm very glad it's still at the Cotton Bowl, because, again, that be at the state fair, for it to be, you know, historically an early morning kickoff. Everybody gets up at the crack of dawn, goes out there to the fair, eats some corn dogs, and, man, it's so unique. But this is going to be an awesome game again. You never know what happens in this game. We've seen Heisman winner Kyler Murray lose. We've seen Oklahoma win by 60. We've seen Texas win by 49. But all of these games, you never truly know what might happen in this rivalry game. And throw the window, the records, the win-loss, everything out the window. But doesn't matter. This is a tremendous game.
CJ, as you take a look at Oklahoma, I'm sure you've done a lot of deep dive on them this week and really over the last couple of weeks with the bye week, obviously setting up for this one. What do you see from the Sooners that you feel like Texas can take advantage of? And are there any areas with Oklahoma, maybe that defense, that give you some concern in regards to matchups going into this one?
Yeah, a concern for me for Oklahoma is, hey, you look at it, they're the most opportunistic defense in the country. They were a year ago. That's kind of their whole theme. That's kind of their whole mantra. Take the football away. They gave up 480 yards to Auburn a week ago, and on the surface level, it's not great. But how did they win that game? It was a defensive pick six by Kip Lewis, right? And big games against Houston. And you might be sitting back saying, well, it's Houston. Well, they were only up by 2 points with 2.5 minutes left in that game. And what did they do? They forced a safety. They got the ball back. They took off more clock, and they made it very difficult for Houston to go win the football game. That's their defense leading the way. And right now, the big headline is obviously Michael Hawkins taking over for Jackson Arnold. That defense is amongst the most opportunistic in the entire country, and they will take the ball away if you're not careful. That was, of course, the storyline a year ago with 4 turnovers against Texas in this game and why they were able to come away with that victory. But for me in Texas, I think that you look at what their strengths are so far. They're moving the football as well as anybody right now. You know, they're top 5 in yards, top 10 in scoring. Offensively, again, it starts up front, but now you have some deeper, faster weapons, you know, and I think it's crazy to sit back and say that this is a faster team than a year ago when you had Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell, but it is. It's deeper 1 through 5 for the Longhorns. When Xavier Worthy comes off the field a year ago, did you have the guy that could contain and maintain that level of speed? Probably not. This year, when Isaiah Bond comes off the field, you have that guy that you can plug in and play right away and maintains that 10-4, 10-5 level speed, which is so tremendous to have as a Texas playmaker on the outside.
I want to jump to, CJ, the status of Quinn Ewers. Again, he's playing in this game. Is he 100%? You know, you've got Arch Manning behind him. What's the feeling and what's the mood around the quarterback position going into a pivotal matchup?
Yeah, this will be an interesting one. Fortunately for Quinn, he's come back from injury before, specifically for this game. That was in 2022 when he got dinged up against Alabama at home, right? You know, hurt the shoulder, made his return a few weeks later against Oklahoma. So it's a very similar, again, kind of unfortunate, unlucky path that he's had to go down again. But he's healthy. He is expected to play. I've been told he's ready to go. You know, this is a game that he's not wanting to miss. His last year in college, of course, you talk about his legacy. Well, he's 1-1 right now in this game. He's looking to become one of the first Texas quarterbacks to leave his college career with a winning record against Oklahoma quite some time. I was told, you know, the bye week really helped. Had the Mississippi State game been at Georgia, been at Texas A&M, been in Oklahoma, he probably would have suited up and played in that game 2 weeks ago. So all gas ahead for Quinn Ewers. I expect him to be healthy, and I expect him to come out ready to go, as we've seen in big games like Michigan and Alabama previously.
CJ, you mentioned the legacy for Quinn Ewers. I want to move to Steve Sarkisian and the importance of this game. I mean, again, it's no secret the success that Oklahoma has had against Texas over the last, I think, like 20, 25 meetings. It's in favor of OU. How important is sort of righting the ship and changing the trajectory of the rivalry? Like, how important? Because like, I think Texas feels like, obviously, ranked number 1 in the country, like set up for success in the future with Steve Sarkisian. It feels like Texas football is, dare I say, quote unquote, back. How important is it for Texas football to establish dominance in this rivalry? Because it's something they just have not been able to do over the last couple of decades, really. Right.
No, you're 100% right. And I think you look back, Oklahoma's 8-2 or 7-3 in the last 10, and that includes a Big 12 championship game. Texas hasn't been able to get over that hump. That is Oklahoma on the first week of October. So you start looking at it from a different perspective. How is Texas starting to become that team to beat, right? Well, for the first time in quite some time, it's been consecutive years that Texas has the best quarterback, the better offensive head play caller, the better offensive line. You look offensively, All that made Lincoln Riley in his era at Oklahoma so dominant is gone. You don't have that at Oklahoma right now. You have a freshman quarterback making a second career start. You have a ragtag bunch of offensive linemen that has made 4 or 5 different combinations of starters so far this year. And you have 5 wide receivers who were very good coming into the year that are all dinged up and not expected to play. All of that favors Texas. Now, you have to go out and win this game, obviously, and Texas didn't do a very good job of that a year ago. The key here is don't let Brent Venables become the guy that keeps Texas from getting to where it wants to be, right? You look at it in the sense of recruiting as well. This is a big recruiting game. Oklahoma's the host this year. They'll have their recruits on campus, but most of these guys come from the DFW area as well, guys that Texas are fighting for. So to kind of keep that leg up and to build not only off of a Big 12 championship a year ago, but also a trip to the playoff, this is a game you have to win if you're Texas to keep Oklahoma just a rung behind you on the ladder towards a national championship.
CJ, we were talking just before we got going. Texas is a 2-touchdown favorite in Vegas in this one. I think I heard it's the second largest spread maybe ever in the Red River Shootout. CJ, key or keys to the game for you, for the Texas Longhorns, to not just win the football game, which would be enough probably, right, for the fan base, but to have success in this football game? What's the key or keys for Texas they need to accomplish to take this Red River Shootout?
Early on, every offensive drive for Texas needs to end with a punt or a kick, and that could be a PAT, that could be a field goal, or that could just be flipping field position. Do not give Oklahoma a short field. As we saw a year ago, what was it? The third play of the game was an interception at Texas's own 20, which led to a touchdown right away for Oklahoma, and Texas had to play catch-up all the way back. Oklahoma's not very successful this year in driving the length of the field to score points. They just aren't. BCFtoys.com, one of my good friends, Brian Freeman, that I like to go to for a lot of these stats. Oklahoma, when they have to go 80-plus yards or 75-plus yards to score, they're 105th in the country at 0.79 points per drive. That's not very good, especially with a brand-new quarterback in an environment like this and an offensive line, as I've said, that's kind of banged up with a lot of new pieces, all of which first time playing in this game. So punting very early. Don't let Oklahoma create short fields for their offense to go score points. That's how you get up early. That's how you kind of extend that drive. And we've seen Steve Sarkisian in every game this year go on a 3 or 4 scoring possession run where it flips. The game just kind of flips, and you feel Sark's kind of in his bag. The offense has that rhythm, and Texas puts up about 20 points in a heartbeat. That will come at some point. And if it doesn't come early, at least prolong the scoring from Oklahoma to allow that drive to come later in the game.
CJ Vogel on Texas football. CJ, last thing, and I'll get you out of here. You know, you hear people say all the time that I hate losing more than I like winning. In a game like this, which is the more superior emotion? Is it the excitement and happiness of winning the game, or the disgust and the heartbreak of losing the game?
I tell you what, man, having attended Texas, having watched this game as a student, I was there for the Cameron Dicker kick, right? You know, and that last second, you know, euphorium that you feel as, you know, the team's running around, as the band's playing, as beers are flying everywhere. There's nothing like it. On the flip side, I was there a year ago when it's Dylan Gabriel on the Oklahoma offense going 80 yards with 1:15 to go. So to put it, you know, bluntly, you want to win this game, but the feelings that you feel after a loss, there's nothing like leaving this stadium after a close loss like that.
Again, CJ Vogel on Texas football, one of the best in the business when it comes to talking all things Longhorn. CJ, appreciate you taking the time. Let folks know, in case they've been living under a rock, where they can check out all your great work.
Yeah, appreciate that. On TexasFootball.com and on Twitter at CJVogel_OTF. Should be a good weekend ahead. And, of course, happy to be here talking to you as Texas is now a member of the SEC.
CJ, enjoy the Red River Shootout, man. We'll do it again soon.
Absolutely. See you next year.
See you next year.